Okay, so this is the method that I went with to install the MyKeyPremium on the Canadian Genesis models. I started the video with the module already removed from the dash and showed the bracket removal and how I went about it from there. If you want to see the actual process of dismantling the dash, skip on ahead to 5 minutes 44 seconds, and that's where I explain how to do all that part. So here we go.
Okay, once you get the module down from underneath the dash, this is the bracket that's in your way, and you've got these very oddball fasteners that just look like that. So you take your little Dremel tool and you grind a little slit into them. And then you can unscrew it. So these, I believe, were Loctite, or just extremely tight in there. But after grinding them enough, I think enough heat got into it and it released either the Loctite glue, or they just finally let up a little bit. Either way, they are screws, they unscrew, which means I can put new screws back in to put the bracket back on. The bracket can come off. You can easily access your wires, hook up your harness, and then reinstall the bracket and reinstall the module into its home. I find this to be a better method than cutting the bracket completely, because now it kind of looks stock again. And I mean, if that bracket is there for any kind of shielding to protect the wires in case it gets kicked, probably a good idea to keep it on. Again, I don't know why the US models don't have it. And as far as these funky screws go, if you really wanted to, you could just clean these up and reinstall them. You don't have to change them out for, a proper bolt or a different screw if you don't want to. Sorry about the focus. You could just reuse these as like a flathead screw. Personally, I think I'm just going to put a couple Phillips screws in. I happen to have some metric. I believe these are an 8mm metric screw. I will confirm that, and I'll put some descriptions in the link when I'm done the video. I will fish this back up in there. You can see that mount there. That goes to that, and then those two holes there go to these two pins. Takes a little bit of trickery to get it, in and out of there. If I took this kick panel off and the floor mat out, I probably would have had a better time, but it seemed like there was enough room, which there was. It was just patience required. Okay, you can see the Phillips screw back that I put back in back there. That was also one of those funky fasteners that I had to grind out. So helps if you have a Dremel with a 90-degree head like this, because then you can ever so gently get it back in there, grind a little slot into it, and then use a really long flathead and undo it. Putting it back in, obviously it was a Phillips. I actually found it easier to use the Phillips than an actual bolt, because trying to hold the bolt on it out of a socket, sometimes it's fumbly and there's not a lot of room to get your hand back in there. So that was my method. You can see there, kind of. You can see there's the screws that I put the bracket back on with, and why this is kind of a tight spot to try and get the Dremel up in here to cut those off with it installed. So I chose to pull the dash glove box off, part of the dash off, take the module out, and work at it that way. I didn't want to get up in there with the Dremel and run the risk of it bucking and hitting other wires or whatever. So I went this route. It's a little bit more time consuming, but I find it probably be a cleaner setup. Not to mention those screws were really, really hard. Again, I thought I was gonna have to cut them off completely. So having the module out, I could get both hands on it, get a good grip, and remove them properly. So if you grind on these a little too aggressively, there's a potential that you could melt some of the plastic and then maybe it won't go back in. That's if you choose to put it back on. those are my thoughts on the situation. Another good tip too is before you install everything, like I already have here, make all the connections, hook it up to your box, close the door, try it out. Make sure it works. Make sure it functions. There's no sense putting everything back together only to find out it doesn't work, because then you have to take it all back apart. So yeah, this is where I'm at. It's installed. When I made the video in reverse because I wanted to confirm the ability to do it before I started recording. So when I start putting dash panels back on, I will show you what screws to remove and what clips to pull and go from there.
A few moments later.
Okay, to start, pull this off a little bit, just enough so you can get at this panel. Pop this panel off with a pry tool. Once this panel is off, you'll have access to that screw right there, and that's what will pull this off. And once this dash piece is off, then you can take off glove box, or you can take glove box off first, it doesn't matter, but you need to have this dash panel off before you can get at the glove box housing. And then in behind the housing is where you'll be able to access the module. The people that don't have the bracket can just get at it from underneath. And yes, you can cut the bracket, but personally I think the way I'm about to show you is a better option. All right, the most nerve-wracking part of this entire disassembly is this dash panel, because it's all pull clips except for one screw on the end, and you always feel like you're gonna break something when you tug too hard. But just go slow and give it short little tugs and it should go. I'll just kind of pull this off. You can see how many clips there's. Every one of those little white pieces, and all the way across to the other side. They're all clips except for that one little screw hole, which is right there. Everything else is just slowly pull it and pull it and pull it as you go. If you got a little pry tool, a little non-marring pry tool like this, definitely helps to get in some of those little joints and pry as needed. But just go slow and be gentle, and it shouldn't be too bad. Okay, when you go take your glove box off, you got that little turn knob there, and there's another one here. You turn it and pop them out. You can see they got like a little cam to them. Might take a little bit of finesse to get them out. Once they're out, you drop this down, and then you will, this is normally sitting on top. You squeeze those two little prongs and pop off this little arm, and then the glove box will drop right down. And then for the hinges, you just got these little pull pins. That's it. There's one pin there and one pin there. Like so. And then the whole glove box will come right out. Okay, take the glove box housing off. You got a screw, 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 which I already took out. That nut and that screw. And you get a bolt, a bolt, a bolt, and another nut. And then there's a little clip here, and it just kind of give it a little tug and it'll pop right off. Let's start with this side here. Sorry, with the camera. Just kind of give it a tug. This one will come. Give it a tug there, and then it's just a matter of slipping it off that. There's that stud there. Once you kind of get it off of there, the whole thing will drop down. You got a connection here, which is pretty simple. This one, on the other hand, you will need a screwdriver or a pry tool, and you'll have to push down on that little lever there and then pull it out. It doesn't have a thumb button like the other ones do. So push down on that little button there with the pry tool or screwdriver, and then tug on the wires, and that one will come off.
But I'm not done yet.
For placement of the module and the wires, These you'll have to try and squish up in and around the fan here so that the lower panel can go back on. But I'm going to run these wires up in behind the brace, and I'll tie them off up here for now. Then once the glove box goes back in, the module will sit on top of the glove box, and I think that'll be a cleaner installation instead of trying to tuck it up in behind the fan and hide it more. Then because the wires alone are going to be enough of a task to tuck up in there with some zip ties. Okay, so that bracket right there that you can kind of see through here is almost like a perfect little place to wedge this box into. So what I did actually already is I took a long zip tie, I put it through the cleat there and around that bracket, wedge it up in here, and kind of push it over until it kind of snugly fits in there, like so. And then, oh, sorry. And then I will tighten up. Tighten up that zip tie in there around that bracket. And then this one here, where it's sitting up front, let's take another, oh, this one's already spent bars there. Simply up and around. Sorry, this is hard to do with one hand. Damn it.
Emotional damage.
And the one at the front, just up and around this little piece of dash panel here. Push the pigtail back in behind so it doesn't interfere with the actual dash panel goes on. Of course, there's that zip tie there that goes around that back bracket, and then that should keep this thing from ever flopping around and rattling in any case. And the wires, just got to kind of tuck them off to the side. Tuck them off to the side over here and around the back. This little bracket right here, the glove box housing slides into it, so you can't be in the way of that, and you don't want to have too much right here because that's where the glove box housing sits. So if you just kind of, even if you tuck this around here, just kind of get it out of the way, like so.
And that's it. Put everything back together the way you took it apart, and I hope it all works out for you. Thanks.